people said they laughed so hard that their jaws ached. If you get a laugh, it's not offensive. People laugh. I think Craig Mazin came up with the idea of the punching bag. I usually say, cut, and then I wish I had better actors.
Okay.
I want to show that clip to investors.
David, when you were 22 years old, you drove to Chicago and you saw a comedy show entitled Void Where Prohibited by Law. What do you remember about this show?
Well, at the time, back in 1971, I was working for my dad as a construction expediter. He was building office buildings, commercial buildings, and he had some videotape equipment. He didn't have it, but a friend of his had some, early Sony video decks, which reel-to-reel tapes, and he said, his friend would be willing to lend me this equipment. And I said, what would I do with video? I'm a film guy. And because I just graduated from college in film. And so he said, well, you could do, video. You can do film for industrial films for some of the Milwaukee manufacturing plants. This did not excite me at all. So I happened to drive down to Chicago. I had a date with a girl there, and we were wondering what could we do. And her roommate suggested, well, there's this show called Void Where Prohibited by Law, and it's in Newtown, and it's in a loft. I had no idea what it was, but we went because that was how we were going to spend the evening. And I remember we went up some stairs. We paid probably $1. And it was a big room with a huge water bed filling the room and a video monitor, a 25-inch monitor at one end and a Coke machine at the other. And we watched this show, and it was probably 70 or 75 minutes of, I guess, I don't remember what was in it, but scatological humor. I thought it was funny. And I don't think my date thought it was funny at all. But I thought, this is amazing. People paid money to see a video show. So that's when I had the idea, okay, we can borrow this video equipment and start a theater. And that was the whole start of the whole career, Kentucky Fried Theater, and led to everything. So I didn't even drive back to Milwaukee. I drove straight to Madison, where my brother was a senior in college or a junior in college. And I said, Jerry, I was just jumping up and down, drooling, saying, I found what we're gonna do now. And we're gonna start a theater, and we'll do videotape, and we'll do funny bits. And I thought we could do as funny as what these people did in Chicago. So, and so that's how the whole theater started.
When did you bring Kentucky Fried Theater to Los Angeles?
Well, we did a show called Vegetables in Madison. We rented the back of a bookstore, and we did that. It was very successful. We only did one show a night on Friday and Saturday, and we charged $1. And we didn't make money, but we did make enough money to buy some new video equipment. And so we decided we weren't going to go anywhere in staying in Madison. And some of the guys thought, well, we could go to a bigger city like Milwaukee. This did not excite me. It was almost like doing industrial films again for Alice Chalmers or whatever corporation was in Milwaukee. So, and our other partner, Dick Chudnow, said, we got to go to LA and we were considering maybe New York, but Chudnow said, I'm going to LA, you guys, whatever we do, I'm just going to LA. So we decided, we'll go to LA. And that's became the movie. Loaded up a U-Haul truck and took the show to LA. We remodeled an old warehouse and made it into a theater. We got it inspected. We hammered and nailed the theater together, just like we did in Madison. And then we opened in October of 1972.
Were your shows in Los Angeles always sold out?
Not at first. we didn't have any budget for publicity, advertising, we didn't have a dime. So what we did was we used tricks, and we had a preview that was filled, and then that was inviting press, and we got very good reviews. But we only had, I think, just Friday and Saturday, 8 o'clock shows, and they were about half filled. And one of the things we did, one time it appeared that almost there were more people on stage than there were in the audience. And it was a little embarrassing. How do you do a show for like 17 people? But so what we just told everybody, come on up, we lived above the theater. We gave them a tour of the backstage and the green room and our apartments and everything. And so it kind of broke the ice. We kind of got to know the audience, and we did a show. But what really broke through was there was a huge billboard in the vacant lot right next to the theater, and we rented it for a month. It probably cost, $250 or something. And we put on the billboard, "This is it, Kentucky Fried Theater," with an arrow pointing down to the theater. And we then organized the whole neighborhood, recruited as many people as we could, probably about 30 or 35 people, to do a protest against the sign. And we said, we told when we invited the media, and they were intrigued by this, and we said, there's a huge protest. A big corporation is planning to tear down the sign and plant a tree in its place. And we held placards saying, "Save the sign." So KBC covered it, and the LA Times, and after that, we were filled on the two shows, 8 o'clock shows. And then the word of mouth just spread, and we got great reviews. Nobody had seen anything like it. It was completely different from what was being shown in live theater at that time. And then we called the show My Nose, so that our listing in the LA Times calendar section every week read, "My nose runs continuously." So we did all sorts of stupid stuff,
Sure.
and as well as, but it was mainly word of mouth. People said they laughed so hard that their jaws ached. Yeah. And they said it was a great date thing to bring someone on a date. So.
Do you remember Dick Ebersol and Lorne Michaels coming to watch the shows?
I do. I remember it was sometime in early 1975, and we thought they were recruiting writers for some show that they were starting, and we thought, well, okay, maybe they'll hire us as writers, because we wanted to somehow get something going. We didn't want to be on stage when we were 35. So, but all we knew was they were hotshot producers from New York. But later, I read there were a couple of books written about Saturday Night Live. And evidently, Lorne Michaels was trying to pitch Saturday Night Live to Dick Ebersol. And he said, I want to do Kentucky Fried Theater on national TV. And so Dick Ebersol didn't especially like the idea, although both of them reportedly just loved the show. They laughed hard at the show. But eventually, I guess Lorne did convince Ebersol to do the show, and the result was Saturday Night Live.
And did you realize in the moment the effect you were having on comedy?
Not at all. We just were having fun doing what we like to do. We were making money. We were able to pay our actors, which no other theater was real. Everybody was just doing stuff for free in those days, and they were glad if they were paid anything. But we paid the actors, and we were starting to think about our comedy and what we were doing. So in Madison, for example, it was just anything goes. We just said this, but somebody at the preview, a friend of Jim's, said, the show was great. I love the show, but in this one sketch, you were doing a joke on a joke. And we said, a joke on what's that? And so he explained, you can't do two jokes at once. If a character in the foreground is being funny, the background has to be serious and vice versa. So that was our first rule. And then eventually we evolved our 15 rules, both, from the theater and in our movies. Once we did Airplane, and we actually got a lot of the ideas from reviews that we got. People pointed out things. I mean, people, the reviewers were pointing out what we did right. So we thought, okay, yeah, our discipline in doing the comedy was working.
And if anyone pointed out that you were doing something wrong, did you brush it off, or did you sort of learn from it?
No one ever did point out.
Oh, okay, well, that's good.
Wrong. Yeah, the show was so funny. I don't think people thought that deeply about, well, this little thing didn't work. But this was a friend of Jim's after the preview, and he pointed out some things. But we were very tough on ourselves and self-critical, and doing the theater for 5 years, it was a laboratory where we were able to develop our style, and we figured out what worked, and it was also great fun, and we were making money, and also during that time we wrote Airplane.
Right, and I know you've said previously that your films, the audience kind of tells you whether you've gone too far, so it sounds like the same thing happened.
Right,
with the theater.
The same thing basically happens, when we do the movie. It's not a live audience, of course, but the movie ends up at about 80 minutes long, and we preview 95 or 100 minutes, and there's 20 minutes in there that isn't funny. So we let the audience tell us, what the pace is, and when something just doesn't work, we just cut it out, and we're still editing it. Jerry and Jim and I did a recut of Airplane about 5 or 6 years ago. And because we screened it so many times for audiences in the ensuing 40 years that we noticed, well, we could cut this a little, tighter. And so it's often advertised as the director's cut of Airplane. People think, oh, great, we're going to see a lot of more material, but it's the only director's cut which is actually shorter than the original.
What was comedy like then when you started, and what is it like now?
Well, movie comedy was great in the 80s and the 90s. I mean, Pat Proft and I did the scary movies during that time. And then I think with the advent of PC, I think audiences would still laugh, but it's the studio executives who became frightened. So I think because of that, filmmakers are a little more careful now, and you can't. You just have to, put in what you want to put in and let the audience decide. But too often in a script, if we put material that we had in Airplane or The Naked Guns, studio executives may today say, oh no, that's a little too risque, or it might offend someone. We were lucky to have Bob Weinstein during the scary movies, because he encouraged us. He said, do more. So, and Michael Eisner and Jeff Katzenberg during the Naked Gun era and Airplane were also really encouraging, and they never tried to censor us or interfere. So it was, but now there is no movie comedy. There's nothing good. I mean, you have mild stuff that is kind of reminiscent of sitcom things. I mean, Ted has been very successful, but it's mild. It's not. It's kind of cute and clever. And it's one of our rules now, is merely clever. Merely clever isn't enough. But there's no zany comedy anymore like Mel Brooks or Woody Allen or what we used to do. But the Wayans are very funny, and they did the first Scary Movie, and they're doing a sequel. They're doing Scary Movie 6, I think. We did 5, so they must be doing 6. But they're good. Mike Myers is also, when he did Austin Powers, he did Spoof, and neither of those people followed any of our rules, but that's okay because it's their own style.
What makes something funny?
Well, that's a very, what makes something funny is a very broad question, but basically I can tell you that what we did was, and what we do is set up familiar situations in a spoof, and then you reverse the audience's expectations of the outcome. So we do, oh my God, we get them going like, okay, they've seen this scene in a million airplane disaster movies or cop movies or horror movies, and then we put in the switch. There's another concept which we call the driving instructor. So this comes from in The Naked Gun, when Leslie Nielsen is chasing a bad guy gets in the car and commandeers the car, throws the driver out and goes in, and he gets away, and Leslie Nielsen commandeers a car, but it's a driving instructor and student. So, and that becomes the whole joke, is that, it's this nerdy girl who, all nervous and everything. And then it's funny. And we did another driving instructor bit in Naked Gun where Leslie Nielsen has a radio mic, goes into the bathroom, so we hear all the bathroom sounds. So, and that writes itself.
In keeping with that, there's something you jokingly said in an interview: you don't want to be accused of being too tame.
Oh yeah, no, being tame is the worst. And I think I mentioned one movie that I thought was kind of tame, but you have to be out there, and you have to have some bite to it. And I remember Jim Abrams, my partner for the Naked Guns and Airplane and Top Secret, he was a stickler for discipline, and he hated mildness. And so he said, you got to be. And Jim came up with jokes like, "How do you take your coffee? I take it black, like my men." I mean, I'm pretty sure that was a Jim Abrams joke. And Pat Proft came up with "Nice Beaver." So, we never want to be mild, but we also don't want to be vulgar. So, in basketball, it was R-rated, but it was only because, Matt and Trey wanted to portray those characters like real characters, like kids actually talk, and so we were able to be a little more out there, but it also limits the audience. And the Wayans did their Scary Movies as R-rated, and then when I took over the franchise, with Bob, we asked Bob Weinstein, "Do you mind if we do this PG-13? Because we can do it. We do it like The Naked Gun. It's real wit. We don't need gross out. And although the Wayans are really funny, it's just not our style." So he said, "Sure," and it broadened the audience.
I believe you've also said you have to go up to the line and then go a little bit over the line. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing is, anti-mildness. You have to go, you just have to keep going. And what Bob Weinstein always said, you guys are stopping when you should just be starting. And so he would encourage us to go over the line. And as long as it's wit and not just vulgarity, it was good to have that encouragement. So, we always try to push it. And there's many examples in Naked Gun where we just went for one more thing, or Airplane, like when we were writing a scene between Bob Hayes and Julie Haggerty, and she's going off about how she remembers all these things, and it was mild. And so Jim Abrams typed, "I remember how you used to hold me and how I used to sit on your face and wriggle." and that was, and that was the joke. And Jim would do that. Jim would type those things, and not pitch the idea. And Jerry and I would read them and crack up, and we said, "Geez, can we do that?" And he said, "Sure, of course we can." And we would do it. And so that's part of going over the line. You got to go, but you can't do it too much, because you get a cumulative effect, we call it.
Oh, and what is that?
It's too much. It's too much. It's too much vulgarity, or you can't keep doing it, because the audience will just get used to it, and we'll lose the surprise. And it's the surprise which gets the laugh.
Right, because Julie Haggerty is such like an angelic presence to her.
And the way and that's the way she. Julie is an angelic presence, and it's the way she really is in real life. She's not acting. I mean, she's a great actress, but and she can act, but it's very much Julie in that character of Elaine.
And I believe you said previously that other actresses might have been squeamish about that particular line.
Oh yeah, one actress was squeamish about that particular line. We were doing New York casting, and Sigourney Weaver came in, and she was very good, but she said, "I don't think I can say that line about sit on your face and wriggle." So we thanked her very much, and but we didn't cast her, because we needed somebody to say all the lines. We were so confident in all of our lines, but Sigourney somehow managed to carve out a career after that. So and we're of course big fans. And
Sure.
Shelley Long came in. I don't know that she complained about any of the lines, but she may have expressed some concern about it, but excuse me, I don't think there was any objection with her.
Forgive me, I'm drawing a blank on the comedian's name. He used to get arrested at his shows, stand up, and I usually would know.
George Carlin?
Oh. Not Abby Hoffman.
No,
he's
no,
different.
it was,
He's not a comedian.
Lenny Bruce.
Lenny Bruce, that's it.
Right.
Because I'm thinking I guess at that time he took it too far, obviously.
Yeah, Lenny Bruce was renowned for going over the line, and he used a lot of profanity, and he would get arrested. So, and the stuff that he's saying now is, probably not arrestable. I mean, the things, if you watch that stuff now, you wonder why he got arrested, but times change.
Sure, and at that time,
right, and
he took it.
Things now may be going backwards. So the studio executive, Pat Proft, and I had a meeting several years ago we had written a Naked Gun script, Naked Gun 4. Nordberg did it, and then we changed it to Naked Impossible, but it was a great script, and this movie, this lady who was the head executive there said, I don't know, you have this one line about the female agent couldn't fit into the Kevlar vest, so she had a breast reduction, and that's too much. She was frightened about that, and it's just like Pat and I looked at each other and just, it's a pretty mild joke.
What are challenges of keeping humor timeless?
Well, we've never done any kind of movie that was based on current events. Spoof means you're spoofing genres which are movies in the first place, and they don't have anything to do with current events. And that's what makes it timeless, and what makes it very international, because everybody shares the references. So, when we do Naked Guns, it's pretty much the Naked Guns that Pat and Jerry and Jim and I wrote were based on pretty much a 1958 TV series called M Squad, and also on the Dirty Harry movies. So they didn't have any relation to current events, and so that makes them timeless. They're always good, and so and our new Naked Gun was based, when we wrote the script, on Mission Impossible and Bourne Identity and Bond, and those are movies. We base on movies, not. I don't know if I'd want to do a rom-com, because it's, I would have to know what goes on in people's lives in current times. I don't live in current times.
Your first rule of comedy is never do a joke on a joke?
Right. So if you have a joke on a joke is if you have something funny in the background, the foreground person has to be completely straight. So you can't have somebody like Jim Carrey doing funny faces in the foreground and then crazy stuff happening in the background. It's just, there's no discipline to that. And I'm not accusing Jim Carrey of anything. He's brilliant, but you have to have some discipline in, and often if you do a background joke, that's more effective when you let the audience find the joke and you let them see something in the background, and we bring that out in our MASTERCRASH course.
Right, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that coming up. How is it possible, though, that comedy has rules? Shouldn't it just be free-flowing? It's whatever works?
Sometimes it is, but a lot of comedians had rules. Like Laurel and Hardy had rules, and Preston Sturges had rules. There's other ones that actually thought about what they were doing, and actually had a lot of discipline. So, but even without necessarily having rules, like the Wayans, for instance, they have a specific style. And if they don't have rules, they certainly are following their own discipline, and it works for them. And the same with Austin Powers, Mike Myers. I doubt if they're writing just whatever goes. But when you're doing spoof, and when you're trying to do our style of spoof, it's best to follow the rules, or else else you're doing it badly or just copying what happened before.
Why did you create MASTERCRASH?
Well, we created MASTERCRASH because Pat Proft and I had written a script, as I may have mentioned before, for Naked Gun 4, and we thought bringing back Naked Gun was a great idea, but not doing it in a cop station in Chicago or LA. We wanted to do a different genre, so we took Naked Gun and we took it into Mission Impossible, Bourne Identity, and Bond, and we thought that was a great idea. And the jokes were great, the plot was great, the characters were great. We knew what we were doing, and then suddenly I woke up to see that Seth MacFarlane, who's very successful and a big fan of us, Naked Guns, Airplane, Top Secret, etc., had taken over the franchise and made a deal with Paramount to cast Liam Neeson, and he hired a director and writers, and they did the movie. And I read the script because they wanted me to put my name on it as executive producer, but I can't put my name on anything unless I work on it from the start. And I would have told them not to do this idea. And without commenting on the script, the basic thing is they're writing it without rules. And the trailer came out about a month ago, and you can see they break about 5 of our rules in the trailer alone. So I was motivated because people think that it's easy, and it's not. So I thought I'll just do this course, MASTERCRASH, because I actually applied to MasterClass and they rejected me. So I'm getting used to rejection. So I'll do it anyways, and it's fine. And we shot for 2 days, we did the 15 rules, and the 15th rule is there are no rules. So we don't take ourselves all that seriously, but we do have some discipline when it comes to comedy. I'm just used to it. When we circulated the airplane script, every studio turned it down. There was only one guy, and this was just a miracle. We were lucky because Michael Eisner loved the script, and he brought us into Paramount. And for a $3 million mini investment, that movie made $160 million for the studio.
Right, and this is going slightly off topic, but I just wanted to ask, I think you said previously that Paramount at that time was not afraid of failure, maybe, and
we wrote a book called Surely You Can't Be Serious, and we got quotes from Michael Eisner and Barry Diller and Jeff Katzenberg, who were all the studio executives at the time. And rather than being these dopey studio executives like you hear about all the time, they were really smart and actually made the movie better. And Jeff Katzenberg is quoted in the book talking about, and I don't know the exact quotes, but he said the philosophy at Paramount under Diller and Eisner were, we're not afraid to fail. We're going to experiment with things. And it was different than every other studio. And of course, totally night and day different with studios today.
Right. Just keeping with that, though, that same theme of fear of failure, not fear of failure, how is that factored in to how you've approached things? Are there times when you've never been afraid of failure and you've taken risk and then you've pulled it back and said, well, maybe this won't work? Or is that just not in your vocabulary?
Yeah, to ever pull back and say, let's not take the risk is not in our vocabulary. I mean, we left Milwaukee for LA, and my mom and dad cried on the driveway because we were leaving home for another state, another city, but they were consoled by the fact that they were sure we'd be back in 6 months. And people would ask us, what was your plan B if you failed? And we thought about it, we said, well, we didn't have a plan B. We were a mixture of completely headstrong and very naive. And I remember back to 50 years ago, we never even thought that we would fail. We had done the show for a year in Madison, and we were just getting great reviews, great laughs, and we thought we were the best thing since sliced bread or whatever the saying was. And we had also seen what the comedy reviews and sketch groups in LA were doing, and we thought, we got this, and we were right, and we just had a lot of confidence, and we also thought we could do a movie better than anybody else too, and then we tried to pitch to all the studios a comedy a script that no one understood. It was going to be a comedy without comedians and 3 untried first-time directors. Everyone said no, and God bless Michael Eisner. He said, well, sure, let's do this. I like the idea, comedy on an airplane. So, I mean, and maybe somewhere, someday, there will be executives who are brave enough or smart enough to make good movies, and I'm sure there are. I don't know if they're at any of the studios, but I'm working on trying to get independent money right now to do movies. It's the only way I can do it. Studios won't do an airplane now or a Naked Gun. They won't do it. It's all big stars, big franchises, superhero movies. And those are great. And Tom Cruise movies. And I love Tom Cruise movies. He can't make a bad movie. So, and those are great. But there used to be a niche that we could fill with a small, independent, I mean, a studio movie, but it's a new idea, kind of just a fresh take on things, and studios would be willing to roll the dice on us, but not anymore.
Another rule that you have is merely clever. Yeah. I'm hoping to clarify that. So you say you have to go beyond what is merely clever?
Yeah, well, one of the rules, and I wish I could recall which number rule it was, but it's called merely clever. And you see that we give examples of this in our MASTERCRASH course, and you see something that appears to be funny, but you don't laugh. So we always, Jim and Jerry and I and Pat Proft always had this mantra that it has to get a laugh. We'd preview the movies, and if we didn't hear a laugh, people may have been like smiling and liking it, but we cut it out. You know, it's got to get an audible laugh to stay in the movie. Otherwise, it's merely clever. And the corollary to that, we have an entire like 100 terms, which we call the glossary of terms, and one of them is bullfighting. And you know, you can do an impressive thing like "Olay! Oh, look what I did! Look at this!" But it's not funny. So in so many comedies, you see, you know, something clever, but it doesn't get it. We want to deal in belly laughs. I mean, you gotta hear it.
Are there rules in comedy about being too offensive?
You know, I've been asked, are there rules in comedy about being too offensive? I can't recall any rule that we have. We just, if it's funny, if it gets a laugh, we know it's not offensive. So if, you know, Julie Haggerty's line got a kind of a gasp or, you know, we would have cut it out. So, but if you get a laugh, it's not offensive. People laugh. Like the whole, the black dudes speaking jive, and we subtitle it. You know, in the past 5 or 6 years, that's been, oh my God, that's offensive. You can't do that now. Well, you know, we show the movie now in, you know, to big audiences, and they still laugh. And at the time, there was some fear that it would offend part of the audience, but blacks and whites laughed equally because we made fun of both. You know, there's stupid white guy subtitles like golly, you know, for she. So it's, you know, and I think all audiences just loved that because it was just being real about that situation.
Right. And then also too having the Barbara Billingsley character sort of enter,
yeah.
and what she represented as this wholesome mom.
Right. And then we have, in addition to that, you know, we have Barbara Billingsley come in, who is the whitest lady on the planet. And she's trying to translate, and she can speak it. And these two guys, the two guys who played the dudes, coached her off set. You know, they spent time with her, teaching her phonetically how to do it.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in movies like Naked Gun, you say reboots often fall flat when they abandon these rules, the original formula. So without knowing the rules, is it impossible to do this stuff?
Yes, it's impossible to do this stuff without knowing the rules. And I know because I read the script to Naked Gun 4, and, you know, they kind of go past the rules. They're not working on the rules. And so, you know, whether audiences will still laugh, who knows? I mean, they laughed at Ted, so maybe Seth MacFarlane has the magic touch, and you know, he's been very successful with Family Guy and a couple of Ted movies, so he does very well. But I know I'll be horrified when I see the Naked Gun. You know, so but I'm not going to see it because, you know, people asked us why we never saw Airplane 2, because we had nothing to do with that. The studio just went and wanted to maximize their profits and, you know, do another Airplane movie. And Jim Abrams always answered, if your daughter became a prostitute, would you go watch her work? So, you know, it would be horrifying. I mean, I regret even seeing the trailer. I don't want to dump on it too much. I mean, but, you know, you can't unsee this stuff. It's like 2 girls, 1 cup. You can't unsee it. And so I will not, and I'm sure Jerry and Pat will never even think of going to see Naked Gun 4.
Right. And then, of course, you say the 15th rule, there are no rules.
Yeah, the 15th rule is there are no rules. So, you know, there's a certain discipline about you shouldn't break the frame, but we break the frame a bunch of times, and you get away with it. You can do it. You can always do something and try it. If it's funny, you can keep it in. Then you've broken the rule and it's fine. But the rules are just a guideline. So, and we use it to really in writing the script to save time. So when somebody pitches a joke, that breaks a rule, Jim or Jerry would say, no, you can't. That's rule 3, or that would be this, breaking the frame, unrelated background. That's merely clever. And if it is merely clever, we'll try to keep going and see if we can get a laugh from it.
Kind of like Dogma 95 for these indie art house directors. You have your rules.
I don't know what.
Dogma 95?
Dogma
okay.
95. I don't know. All I know is that I won't go see a Wes Anderson film because it's way above my head. I don't know what the hell he's talking about.
Can you teach someone to be funny? Are there people that are just not teachable? They just can't. They have no timing.
It's a good question. Can you teach somebody to be funny? I don't know if you can, but if they are funny and want to do spoof comedy in this Naked Gun airplane scary movie style, they'll need to know the rules, or I would strongly advise them to know the rules. But the 15th rule, maybe they can just bypass. Maybe they're just funny. I don't know. Whatever they want to do. I'm just disappointed that we couldn't do our script. But we've repurposed our script. It's called Counterintelligence, spelled with 1 L and a J, and we're going to get that going. About after Airplane came out, the studio wanted to do a sequel, and so we came up with an idea we would do a sequel, but we don't want to do another Airplane movie. So our idea was Bob and Julie fly down the plane, he takes her home to meet his family, and it's The Godfather. He becomes Michael Corleone. So, and it wouldn't even be on an airplane, but it would be called Airplane 2, The Godfather, I guess. But Michael and Jeffrey loved the idea. To their credit, they were always good. But then they took it to Francis Coppola to get permission, and he said, no, I want to do Godfather 3. So, Jim and Jerry and I always thought everyone would have been better off had they let us do, Airplane 2, The Godfather. I don't want to dump on Francis, but because he's, Godfather 1 and 2, he's like the best director in world history because he did Godfather 1 and 2, never surpassed. Those are the 2 best movies ever.
Right. If you are interested in storytelling, you may also like our new book, Story Questions, the sponsor of today's video. It's a story tool that offers you over 1,500 story questions that you can use as story prompts. It's packed with over 40 categories, so whether you are in the brainstorming stages, developing characters, dialogue, or rewriting, it can help you at every stage of the writing process. Think about this statement. Most powerful stories are just great answers to strong questions. We've linked up to story questions in the information section below. Now back to the interview. I believe you once said to Leslie Nielsen, I will never let you do anything that isn't funny. How could you make such a promise?
Well, I promised Leslie that I'll never make you do anything that isn't funny, and I can make that promise because, if something wasn't funny that he did and it didn't get a laugh, it was out of the movie. So I can make that promise easy. And the other aspect of that is that I remember the first table read for Naked Gun, Priscilla Presley was very nervous and said, I don't know how to be funny. And I said, don't worry, you don't have to be funny. Just let the lines do the work. And I've said that to many actors and actresses since then. I just said, don't ever try to be funny. Just let the lines do the work. It's when somebody tries to clown and be funny that it gets into trouble.
Why don't you like to cast comedians in your movies?
Oh, we have a rule that we do in MASTERCRASH, the 15 rules, called Jerry Lewis. So, and it doesn't mean that we especially don't like Jerry Lewis, but we don't need comedians, and that's the whole thing. You know, it was easier to do Airplane without having to put in an expensive actor like Chevy Chase at the time, who's wonderful, or Bill Murray, who's wonderful, or later Jim Carrey. These are great comic actors, Robin Williams, but they don't belong in our movies because the actors have to be just completely serious. So that's why we never have a comedian. It's just, it's kind of the Uberization of comedy. You don't have to be a skilled taxi driver to know every address and all this stuff and have to communicate with a dispatcher. All you need is a license and a cell phone and with Waze on it, and you can drive anywhere. So, and this is with our actors. You don't need to be. Robert Stack didn't have to be funny. Leslie Nielsen didn't have to be funny. Not Bob Hayes or Julie Haggerty either. And we just, they let the lines do the work.
Can you explain why it's so important for actors to play their lines straight?
Well, it's the rule number one in our MASTERCRASH is joke on a joke. And if an actor would try to be funny, that would be a joke on a joke. I mean, the line as we wrote it is the funny element. And so all Leslie Nielsen has to do is just be earnest and sincere and serious. And he says, I am serious, and don't call me Shirley. And that's all we needed for the laugh. You don't need Jim Carrey, bless his heart, to be, I am serious, and don't call me, that's a joke on a joke.
Right.
So I think that explains it.
Okay,
I
great.
actually explained that pretty well. Yes.
I think you did.
Yes.
And going back to another thing we've talked about was you love having an actor say a line and then after a beat, kind of visually showing what was said. Example, Nice Beaver in Naked Gun.
All Leslie said in that joke is nice beaver, and then we got the laugh, and he just kept looking up there, and she hands him the beaver, and she said, oh, thank you, I just got it stuffed. So, and the audience never heard that line because the laugh was so long. But one example that we did with Leslie that I always loved this joke is when he shoots his own car and it catches fire and rolls over a fire hydrant. And he said, does anybody get the license plate number? And you can see in his face that he's realizing that he shot his own car. And the audience really appreciates being in on that joke. And they're getting it, it's not spoon-fed to anybody, but you know what's going on in his mind. He says, I have to get back to the office. And he goes in. It's a wonderful gag because of that.
And it gathers steam. There's a crowd forms, and yeah.
Yeah, and then there's other gags that just keep building. That there are 7 jokes on a page. Like when Matt Stone and Trey Parker are trying to save the kid in the hospital. And it's just a wonderful, that's that, flywheel of building laugh on a laugh and a laugh. And they're pounding the kid's chest and trying to, and we did a similar scene in Scary Movie 3 where Anthony Anderson is trying to save the dead body and he gets up on the casket at the funeral and it collapses and we just kept going. And that stuff, we were kind of winging it on the set, and I didn't stick exactly to the script, but we wrote it into the script later. And Bob Weinstein was concerned because we were going overtime, and I think Craig Mason called him and said, "Don't worry, David has it all handled. He's making it up on the set." So it made it fun.
Well, I think you did that as well in Airplane with the hysterical woman.
Right, we built in Airplane the gag. It was only supposed to be just Leslie and the stewardess and the nun shaking the hysterical woman. But she suggested, why don't you have them slap me? So we did that. And then somebody else suggested, why not have other people waiting in line with guns and knives? So we sent the prop lady out to get all those props, and that was a gag that was built and has become a meme now. Just like Leslie in front of the exploding fireworks factory saying, "Nothing to see here, please disperse, nothing to see here." That you see that all the time.
I believe your goal is to write 3 jokes a minute to keep people laughing. Does this mean you have to have 3 jokes, let's say, for every page of your screenplay?
Our goal is not to write 3 jokes per minute. What that came from is it just came out that way. And you can go back and there may be 2 jokes on a page, rarely 1 joke, because what we want to do is keep the audience laughing. So everything is either a setup or a punchline. And that's just the way it works out. And that came from our Kentucky Fried Theater show. Back in the 70s, we hated being on stage when the audience wasn't laughing. So we just kept the pace going. And so we found it also that it was easier to keep an audience laughing than to, start them up from scratch. So that's where the pace came from.
Everything has to be a joke or a setup to a joke. Why is this important?
The reason, everything has to be a joke or a setup to a joke because of what I said about pace, and that keeps the pace. There's no, there was a movie called Spies Like Us with Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd, and there were some really funny bits in it, but there were whole 5-minute segments where they were just doing serious stuff. And in a comedy like that, and that's a zany, silly comedy, I thought you just had to keep the pace going.
Well, for a 90-minute movie, though, can you really get the audience to laugh, let's say, 270 times?
Well, not in a 90-minute movie, but in an 80-minute movie. Comedy shouldn't be longer than 80 minutes. You can absolutely get them to laugh, the 3 jokes a page 300 times or something, if the story is strong. And the stronger the story, the less the movie has to rely on the jokes. So, and this is what I said about the Farrellys, that they are very good at that. Although they're not really doing spoof. Neither are Stone and Parker in South Park. But Stone and Parker always make sure to put a kind of a moral in the story and a purpose to what they're doing in each South Park episode. So it makes the jokes easier for them to do and that much more effective.
How common is 3 jokes a minute today in current?
Well, there are very few spoof movies. There are very few spoof movies being done, and that's where you really get that pace and the 3 jokes a minute thing. And so nobody's really doing that, and I don't know if anybody is even trying it. Because it takes a strong story and it takes knowing the rules to actually pull that off.
Which of your movies would you say get the most laughs?
For pure laughs, I would say Basketball and Top Secret get the most laughs. It's just they have the most jokes. I did another movie called An American Carol, and I saw that recently, and I didn't remember it being that funny, but it is so funny. I was laughing so hard for the whole thing. And that had a lot of jokes in it. But it depended on character and story. So we didn't there was not really 3 jokes a page in that one.
When is it where you have too many jokes? At what point does it get to be where we're being peppered with too much clever or should be funny moments?
Sometimes there are too many jokes, but usually it's because people aren't following the plot. If the jokes overshadow the plot, like this happened a lot in Top Secret, and I think that people wanted to root for Val Kilmer's character, and since we didn't give him one, The second half became mainly a joke book, and it wasn't as effective as Airplane, where there was a real rooting interest for Bob Hayes to overcoming his PTSD. And in basketball, the same thing happened. In the second half, it became more of a joke book because I don't think the characters of Coop and Reamer, their problems were realistic enough and emotional enough for the audience to hang on to. We needed more. So, I mean, these are all things I figured out later, and I use them as, you know, as lessons. And this is kind of a little bit outside of the rules. The rules are mainly about jokes, but in subsequent master crashes, I'll probably talk about the importance of character in these things because, and you know, actually, Pete and Bobby Farrelly know that. They know that really well. In Something About Mary, it was all about character, and so they didn't need as many jokes. And Pete Farrelly said, "Great comedy puts an arrow through the heart." And I thought, God, this kid that, you know, idolized Airplane and The Naked Guns is teaching me something. So, and that's great. And also, he was one of the original basketball players. And by the way, he loves the script to star of Malta, and wanted to sign on as executive producer. So I was very flattered by that.
And that's a film that you've been working on for a few years?
It's a script that we've had for many years, and it's film noir, great story. You know, we really paid attention to character, and it's set in 1949, and we're actually making progress. We're about to do it. We've just about raised the money, and that'll be my next movie.
What are your first steps of writing a new comedy?
With Airplane, the process was, we saw an old movie called 0 Hour, 1957, black and white movie, had the same plot. Guy goes up with PTSD on an airplane, and the stewardess is his girlfriend, and there's food poisoning, and he has to fly the plane down. So that was written by Arthur Haley, and so he knew all the ins and outs and the intricacies of and the importance of putting a character in there. And so we followed that. We just put in the jokes, and we landed at Paramount. They had us rewrite more stuff on it, which improved it greatly. And for Naked Gun, we based it on Police Squad, which was based on a 1958 TV series starring Lee Marvin called M Squad. And so we just did, 6 episodes, and ABC couldn't cancel it fast enough because it got no audience, even with only 3 networks. So, but people didn't get it. I say all my flops are just ahead of their time. That's what happened there. And so we wanted to do a movie of that. We thought it was canceled because it was on TV. And so we'll do a movie on it. And because we did Ruthless People with Dale Launer, we knew the importance of character and to craft this 3-act structure. So we did that in Naked Gun and used some of the jokes from Police Squad. And we started out with what was the character, what was the character's problem, what was the love story, and then what was the 3rd act, the big 3rd act. So for all the Naked Guns, we started out with what was the relationship between Leslie and Priscilla, and the final, but we always called it the final fly down because of Airplane. It was the baseball game. So and in Naked Gun 2.5, it was a big environmental speech in front of the president. And in 3, it was the Oscars. So we always had this big public event, and that's how we started it. And in the scary movies, we always started out with a character, and we started out with Anna Faris and Simon Rex meeting, boy meets girl, boy gets girl, boy loses girl, and boy gets girl. And they resolved the problem because I think she always needed a family and needed to provide a home for her son. And so actually the audience, as stupid and silly as the movie was, they did take that seriously. Same with Airplane. We were kind of surprised. Audiences really were nervous about, they wanted Bob Hayes to be able to fly the plane down. So, and in Naked and Scary Movie 4, it was kind of the same thing with the relationship between Anna Faris and Craig Bierko. So, and all those were big hits, you know, just really, really good movies.
And just as a side, you said flops, your flops.
Well,
I believe you said you really haven't had any flops because they become cult classics.
Yeah, the flops have become, you know, I always say, you know, Top Secret didn't really open that well at the box office, and also the baseball did not open big, but it all eventually, they all made their money back for the studios, and then they became, but in the 20 or 30 years since, oh my God, they're it's like nobody can believe they weren't big hits. So, you know, I'm very proud of those movies because they're so well regarded now. It's nice.
I believe Pat Proft says that one of the ways he works on a comedy movie is to watch as many of the movies in the same genre as possible. How much of this is your process?
Pat Proft has said that when he sits down to write a movie, he wants to see as many of the movies in the genre as possible. And a good example of this was when we were writing Star of Malta, and we saw about 20 movies, film noir, but we had one basic movie that we were very lucky to find called Detour, and we Pat and I call that our 0 hour, because we really based the movie on Detour, that whole love story and that plot. But Detour, coincidentally did not, or curiously, had like 2 acts, and then it seems they ran out of budget, so it ended. So Pat and I and Mike McManus, our co-writer, watched about 20 other film noir movies, and we cobbed together a great overall plot. And it's very clever, really, without being merely clever. And we got a 3-act structure out of it, and you can't predict what's going to happen, and you can't predict the love story, and it's a real page turn, and it's funny all the way. So I can't wait till we do it, and we plan to get started shooting it in the fall or first of next year.
Here in the States?
Yeah, here probably at Warner Brothers.
Okay, and you said 7 years to actually find financing?
Yes, it took us 7 years. Yeah. Well, we had financing, and then it falls through, and then you get stuff, and it's always. Well, I've kissed a lot of frogs.
But you never gave up. Why not say maybe the universe is saying it's not meant to be? Why keep going?
Well, I never give up because my experience has been that I actually do the things that I dream of doing. So Airplane was a real dream. Imagine that, coming from Milwaukee, and then directing a hit movie that's now, it's very highly regarded. It's always Airplane is always in the top 5 comedy movies, and I object to any other 4 movies being in that top 5. So so it's so that's why, and we never were going to give up. We stayed with Airplane for 5 years. It took us 5 years, and because we couldn't get it financed, that's why we did Kentucky Fried Movie. It was a movie that we could do. So while I'm waiting to get Star of Malta financed, I've done other projects, doing MASTERCRASH. I wrote the book with Jerry and Jim, Surely You Can't Be Serious. So I'm never not doing a project, and right now I'm redoing my office. I got to be doing something, and I'm okay. I have a fun life. I'm not like wringing my hands being sad about not doing a movie. I'm kind of sad about having Naked Gun taking away, but you know, it'll all work out. It's like we'll be able to do counterintelligence.
So you know it's part of the process, waiting, getting turned down, waiting.
It's been, I have gone through this so many times, coming up with a great idea, waiting for it to get done, having a lot of people say you can't do it, getting it done, having it be a big hit, or having it not be a hit and then get appreciated, you know, big time 20 years later. So why should I ever give up on anything? And I love my ideas, and I want to do them, and they're fun to do, and they're so low budget that nobody ever loses money on them. No studio ever lost any money on any of these movies. They just, you know, they were so low budget, and then it's said to have a long tail. That means it's got DVD, it's got streaming, it's got video, all this stuff. So the studio is fine. They're making plenty of money on it.
In comedy, how do you get the audience to care about characters?
Well, you know, the way we get audiences to care about the movie and the characters, and in that expanse of time, you know, getting a satisfying ending, is that my brother always said, you know, first you get your hero up a tree, in the second act you throw stones at him, and in the third act you get him down. So you present a problem that the main character has, and it can't be just a physical problem. It's got to be an intrinsic, emotional, or deep character problem that he's got to resolve. So maybe he's shy, maybe he's this, but he's got to figure this out. And I call that the software plot, and the hardware plot is, okay, the pilots are passed out, he's got to fly down the plane. So that's just hardware. But what the audience really cares about, and the only thing they do care about, is that this character solves his problem. So, you know, even the Marx Brothers really did only one good movie. I love the Marx Brothers. They have so many great bits, but they only had one good complete movie, and that was Night at the Opera. And Irving Thalberg at MGM figured out that, you know, the audience didn't care about the Marx Brothers. They cared about the characters who were the opera singers, who were in love and wanted to be together and wanted to get a job in the opera. And they had a great 3-act structure. And it doesn't matter how many side trips the Marx Brothers went on, in the end, Alan Jones and Kitty Carlisle got what they wanted. They were able to fall in love and make it in the opera. And, you know, everybody loved the Marx Brothers, but they didn't care about the Marx Brothers. So that's the lesson that I've learned.
Now, I know you've said in Naked Gun you've used Nordberg as a punching bag character. What is that type of character, a punching bag?
Well, I think Craig Mazin came up with the idea of the punching bag, and when he didn't participate in the Naked Guns, but he did point out that Nordberg, during the whole, for instance, in the first Naked Gun, kept getting beat up and, you know, punched, and the kicker at the end, which you always need in these movies, featured Nordberg, you know, rolling down the steps of Dodger Stadium and being catapulted over the railing. And for one last thing, and we didn't need any more, and we backgrounded it, which is another rule, that everything's more effective if you don't point out to the audience. So this is that theory that you pick out one person. Now, you don't have to do it in every movie. I don't know if we had it in Naked Gun 2.5. Oh yeah, we did. Barbara Bush was the punching bag, and I can't remember who had it in 3, but we do use that. We do use that concept. That's a glossary term, not a rule.
Okay. And you came up with this glossary of like how many words?
We came up with the glossary from doing all the Naked Guns and the scary movies. And we would every time we learned a lesson, we put that in the glossary.
Are there other character types you like to use in your movies? And we talked about the punching bag character. What other types of characters do we use?
Well, the characters in our movies, there's always a dumb guy and a straight guy. So Leslie Nielsen played the dumb guy, but he didn't play it funny. He was just thick. And everybody around him was very serious, like George Kennedy, very serious. OJ was very serious. But and we just try to isolate the comic persona from all the straight people around them. And the Marx Brothers did that too. Everybody around them were very straight. And I suppose that's another rule, but that'll probably be in the glossary.
But with Lloyd Bridges, he played it straight, and then his sort of airline assistant, the person that was in the control room with him, was silly and over the top and fun.
Lloyd Bridges played it straight, and then here's a big rule we broke, which is called Jerry Lewis. And right in the middle of the airplane movie is this crazy air controller guy named Johnny, and that was played by Steven Stucker, who was in our theater show. And he was in our show for 5 years, and he played exactly that flamboyant character. And so we knew we wanted to put him in the movie, so we stuck him in there. Plainly, the 15th rule, there are no rules. And he's funny, he fit in fine because everybody else was very serious and straight around him. So it works. And also, if you get a laugh, if he had not gotten a laugh, we would have cut him out. Oh yeah, no, he's great. And some of the jokes that Stucker did in Airplane were right from the stage show. Because, at one point on our stage, a guy says, Johnny, what can you make out of this? And he says, I can make a hat or a pin or a
brooch,
a pterodactyl. Yeah. And these things got great laughs. And also, we did the thing with Bo Caporal and Pat Proft in our stage show of, I don't remember, Copper, and maybe this will refresh your money, and he gives them money. And we did that on stage. We do it in Naked Gun.
We've sometimes heard from writers that their characters will speak to them. Has this happened to you? And what do they say?
People say that, writers say that sometimes when they write characters, the characters will speak to them. Well, I'm not nearly that sophisticated to ever have that happen. I don't even think about it. We just write the characters. They don't, and we pattern our characters after characters we see in movies, and we imagine them to be those characters. So Bob Hayes was Dana Andrews in 0 Hour, and Julie Haggerty was Dana Andrews' wife, Linda Darnell. But we don't care about the characters. We just write the jokes, and fortunately we had Arthur Haley write that character for us in 0 Hour that we used for Bob Hayes. And we did that movie, and we thought, hey, great, we just fill 80 minutes with jokes, and we got a movie. So, and we just had to learn. So MasterCrash will hopefully be helpful to people to avoid the mistakes. And, we made plenty of mistakes. And if you learn from them, you know that you need this stuff.
As a director, what is your approach to building a scene?
Well, people have asked me, what's my approach to building a scene? Well, I just read the script. So a lot of directing is in the writing, and we write so that we can fast forward, we can imagine being on the set and doing this thing and building the scene. I mean, there are times when I've improvised on the day, like the scene in Scary Movie 3 where Anthony Anderson is creating havoc in the funeral at the wake, and then I think I added some stuff in that and kind of directed by the seat of my pants, as they say. And then other times, in a scene like that, the shaking the woman in Airplane, we built that scene really well because we took suggestions from the crew and from actors. And then in Basketball, that scene was built, I think it was all on the page. And so that's not so much as a director, but as a writer. So, I mean, I don't take credit so much. I take credit as a director for not screwing up a scene, because it should be all on the page before you get to the set.
What do you say to actors after you say cut?
I usually say, cut, and then I wish I had better actors.
Okay. All right.
No, that's actually, I just say cut, either that's great or let's do it again. Sometimes the actor will want to do it again. Sometimes I'll have one thing to add. Usually with somebody like Michael Madsen, I would add, you got to cut out the pause between and the, because he would pause. His acting style was pausing. I said, you can't have pauses. And, he would laugh and we would do it. We had one great battle, which is recorded on the video assist, and I have to get it someday and play that, to show what a stickler I am for pace. You can't pause. No, there can't be pauses.
What does an actor want from a director?
I think, somebody asked my brother Jerry, what is the director? And he said, the director is the guy who knows what he wants. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. And I think that's what actors want to know, is that, the director has some idea of what he wants. And the directions isn't just, now just do it again and make it funnier. You can't give a direction like that. You have to give specific directions. And I think that's what actors like. And I also don't want to do a lot of takes. I try to do 3 or 4 takes. Like the first take is usually for rehearsal. Often it's the best take. Like, directing Bill Pullman, we had to get it on the first take. He was great on the first take of everything. And then, then we'd have to piece it together. And then I told Robert Vaughn once, your best take is always the one before I start directing you. So, I have to watch out for over-directing. And I've done that before. You can't micromanage too much. And then with Jeremy Piven, I got so frustrated, I just said, we're just mired in muck here. And I probably shouldn't have said it out loud, because he started getting really worried, because I think actors want to know that someone is in control. And I think that I was kind of giving up. And as it happened, that particular scene was cut because it wasn't funny, and it wasn't his fault. But I was frustrated because I knew it wasn't funny.
What do you expect from the actors that you work with?
What I expect from actors is, I don't expect any more than when I cast them, they read the lines. I loved the way they read the lines. And what type they were and how they looked, and that's why I cast them. So I just expect them to, say the lines and take directions, and every one of them has. I've never had a problem with an actor.
How much do you allow your actors to come up with their own lines?
Oh, good. That's a good question. Other directors, I guess, allow actors to improvise, come up with their own lines. I never do. I appreciate suggestions, but there aren't many, and I usually do try them, because even if I don't think it'll work, usually it can't hurt to do an extra take and try it. And if it works, I will use it. There was a scene at the end of a scene in Ruthless People. Judge Reinhold is trying to prove how ruthless he is, and while he's talking about how cruel and ruthless he is, he scoops up a bug and takes it out of the house and slams the door, and just drops it on, sets it down. And he said, "How about, why don't I open the door again and then stomp on it?" And I said, "No, that's never going to work." And then I thought about it and I said, "Okay, we'll try it." Because, who am I to say that something's, I can't predict. We test the movies. I can't predict what an audience is going to say. So we did try it. And I thought it was kind of funny, but then we previewed it and it got a big laugh. So, that I do take suggestions, but I don't take suggestions if the actor wants to play it funny. I just, if they're going to go Jerry Lewis on me, I don't think that's a good suggestion.
Will you ever make an independent movie?
I'm hoping to make an independent movie now. I mean, the studios don't make comedies like mine. They'll only make it with, people they worship, like Seth MacFarlane, who, Seth MacFarlane must have $300 million. He's got a huge hit TV series, a couple of them, which print money. The Family Guy has gone on forever. He's got hit movies like Ted, and it's like the line in Fiddler on the Roof, where they sing, "When you're rich, they think you really know." So they give him Naked Gun, and so I'm forced to do my movies independently because the studios, they'll go after, the rich guys, and I understand that. That's Hollywood. So, but I'm going to make an independent movie. It's called Star Malta, and maybe Counterintelligence, which would have been Naked Gun 4, will be an independent movie.
And what excites you about making an independent movie? Because there's so much behind it that's going to be elbow grease and things falling out, locations, whatever.
Well,
what excites you about it?
It's just what excites me about doing an independent movie is just doing the movie. I mean, it won't be any different than making a studio movie. It's not like we're using a pickup crew of students or something. We'll do it on the Warner Brothers lot, and probably at an LED studio. So it's not going to be different. We'll still have a 6-week schedule. And big stars. So. Not big stars, but people you've heard of, and a lot of cameos. It'll be done like a regular movie. It won't be any different than a studio movies, except studios don't do movies like this.
Do you think that people like yourself, when they have a new movie, should be automatically greenlit?
No, I don't think anybody should be automatically greenlit. I mean, they're automatically greenlighting Naked Gun 4, and that shouldn't be greenlit. So, and they should be. So, no matter what I've done, I think I've come up with some bad ideas for movies and some bad scripts in the past, and they weren't greenlit. They shouldn't have been greenlit. So, nobody gets to that point. I mean, some people do, obviously, and they're greenlighting stuff and putting $60 million into it, and they can be horrible. I won't say what specifically, but yes.
Who was one of the funniest people you've ever met?
Oh, that's a good question. Funniest person I ever met? Well, I never met Groucho, so he's out of the running. Woody Allen. I met Woody Allen. He's still alive, and I had a nice 20-minute conversation with Woody Allen during halftime of a Knicks game in the Garden, and I'm enamored of Woody, and we idolized Woody Allen, but all he wanted to talk about was Airplane because he loved Airplane, and so that made my day. So it's very cool. Also, Mel Brooks is very funny, and we had a couple of lunches with Mel Brooks after Airplane and Top Secret came out. He took us out to lunch. He was very nice, and he's always funny. He's great. You see him on, on a talk show, and he's just very funny. I mean, he's 94 now, but He's very funny, off the cuff, very quick wit.
Off the top of your head, top 10 favorite comedy movies that were not your own.
My top 10 movies, probably Annie Hall, Groundhog Day. You know what I like The Holdovers. That made me laugh. Something About Mary. That was a funny movie. I can't think of any others.
Foul Play?
Foul Play was very funny also. Yeah, I'm sure there's some that I'm not thinking of, but Tootsie. That's one of my top 5, more than Foul Play. Tootsie was such a masterclass in structure and character, and that's why it was so funny. And that's why when the audience leaves the theater, they go, yeah, that was good. I like that. And Robin Williams was great in it. And Chevy Chase did some movie, the Fletch movies were good because Chevy Chase is such a master at comedy. And of course, Bill Murray, who I mentioned in Groundhog Day, he's really good in a lot of stuff.
And last but not least, this is the question I was just curious about. What would have happened if you didn't leave Wisconsin? Have you ever thought about that?
Yes,
Dave?
I thought if I hadn't gone to that Void Where Prohibited by Law video show, and we hadn't gone anywhere, I think Jerry and I would have stayed in Milwaukee and developed apartment buildings. We would have been in the real estate business. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think but as it is, we were able to start small, and we started a small theater that had 70 seats in the back of a bookstore, and that was the start of everything.
Do you think that would have been an easier life?
No, I can't even imagine having to work for a living. So yeah, I don't think the real estate business was great for my dad, and Jim's dad was an attorney. And in the real estate, in fact, he was partners with my dad. It was called Abrahams and Zucker Real Estate. And Jim, when we left Milwaukee, was a private investigator. So he would have continued doing that. And he was able to have a company car, a Ford Galaxy, and he was happy with that. I probably would have been miserable, but yeah.
So what you do now every day, or when times have gotten tough, someone said no, it's not work?
No, what I do is not work, even because I have enough money to live on, not as much money as Seth MacFarlane, but I mean, he could buy and sell me 300 times. But I'm comfortable, I have a house, I have my family. I'm very happy. I go on trips. I visit my daughter. And my son is in the business. He's reading scripts at Warner Brothers and doing some independent movies. And I just don't want to work. And so I want to. If I do my own movies, I don't work. I will work 24/7. But I'm just driven to do. Star of Malta. So that's that's always, the carrot attached to the horse that I keep following it. And eventually the horse catches up with the carrot, as I've found.